Hi everyone, my name's Nerissa, big time craft enthusiast and lover of all things Bargello. For those of you who don't know what Bargello is, it's an ancient method of tapestry which had a huge resurgence in the 70s, and I'm on a one-woman mission to bring it to the modern maker. Its simple stitches mean it's great for all levels of crafter, and if you're a colour lover like me, then it's definitely the craft for you. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own wall hanging so that you can decorate your gallery wall with a pop of vintage style. If you're new to Bargello, you might want to go and check out my first video on how to get to grips with the stitches. You can scroll down on this page and find it there. So first of all, let me show you what you're going to need to make this project. Some 7-count plastic canvas, just one sheet will be fine. Some chunky yarn. I'm using the Amazing Paint Box range for this because it comes in lots of colours, but of course you can use any chunky yarn. A needle. I'm using a darning needle for this, but any needle that has a big enough eyelet for you to get your thread through will also be fine. Some scissors. I've got some embroidery snips for my thread and some scissors so I can cut my grid to size. And then last but not least, the frame of your choice. I'm using this wooden frame, but you can use any frame that you like depending on what you want to match your decor. So to get started, you're going to need to prep your canvas. So first things first, you can remove that sticker. You definitely won't need that. And then I'm going to use my scissors to snap this plastic hanger off because we're not going to need that either. Plastic canvas is brilliant because you can use normal household scissors and it cuts through nice and simply. So I'm just going to snip that off and now I have my canvas. Now it's up to you to decide how big you want your tapestry to be. For mine, I've made it square, which means I've taken the amount of squares that are along the top here, and then I've cut the grid to size down here. So you can choose which side you want. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm literally just going to work with the canvas as it is. So as you will have seen, my project is square, so I'm going to cut the grid to size. All I've done is taken the measurement of this side, which is 26 centimetres, and then I've made a small mark, which you probably can't see, but definitely make sure you can when you're cutting your own project, down this side. So I'm going to cut this to size now. Okay, so now we have a nice square piece of grid. It's time to start our stitches. If you're new to Bargello, I would definitely recommend checking out my video that shows you how to do the basic steps. But if you're not, we can get going. So now we have our canvas cut to size, it's time to start with our stitches. You'll need your needle and then you'll also need your thread. And remembering that we only ever work with an elbow's length worth of thread, give that a snip and get your needle threaded. Now, I'm not using my trick on this one because the eyelet is pretty big, so it's nice and easy to pull the thread through. So once you're ready, we're going to start at the bottom left-hand corner of the grid because we always work from left to right, and then we're going to work from the bottom to the top. So starting in this bottom corner, I'm coming up through the grid, and before the tail pulls all the way through, I'm putting it in place, ready to start my stitches. Now for this project, I've used a count of 6, which means I'm in square 1, and I'm going to count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and come back down. I'm then going to work up the grid, so I'm jumping up by 1, and then coming back down again. And I'm going to do this 4 times total until I start to reach a peak, all the while holding that tail in place. Once I hit the top, I'm going to start working down the canvas, which means I'm going to switch the direction in which my stitches are happening. Rather than coming up at the bottom of the stitch and coming back down, I'm going to start at the top here, coming up through the canvas, and then going down at the bottom. The reason for this is if you stitch the same direction, you won't have anywhere for your tail to hide, which will make the back not very neat. So we're going to keep doing that until we get to the bottom of the grid again. And now you can see I've got a perfectly geometric pattern made up of the same amount of stitches on either side with a peak in the middle. So now I'm just going to carry on doing that until the end of the grid. As you stitch, because we do it with shorter lengths, you may find that your thread runs out. If you're new to Bargello, it's simple to finish your stitches. All you need to do is turn your grid over and thread underneath the stitches you've just made, pulling the needle out the other side and then snipping the excess thread off. Once you're ready to stitch again, all you need to do is thread your needle up and then turning your grid back over, push the needle underneath the stitches towards the direction you want to begin again. As you begin stitching again, it's advisable just to hold that tail in place because you might find it slips through. But once you've done 2 or 3 stitches, you can carry on as normal. As you come to the end of your stitches, as normal, you're going to hide your tail underneath the stitches so that you can finish your row completely. To do that, all you need to do is get that last stitch in, then turn your grid over and manoeuvre the needle underneath the stitches, just like you have the entire way along. Once you're happy, you can pull it through and then snip the tail end. And there you have your first row of Bargello. Now, if you're anything like me, there's going to be a lot of colour in this Bargello. We're using a simple pattern where we gradient up as we go. I'm only using 3 colours, but the world is your oyster when it comes to choosing your shades. You can use as many or as little as you like. I'm going to add in my next colour, which is going to be this nice terracotta colour. I'm going to thread up my needle like I did before. And then what I'm going to do is turn my grid over towards where I want to start my next row of stitches, which is going to be here. So I'm going to put my needle underneath and pull it through, catching my stitch at the end. So I don't want to pull it all the way through. Then I'm going to turn my board back over and very carefully, using my thumb and finger to hold it in place while stitching at the same time, I'm going to come up in the same square because we always share a square in Bargello. So you're going to come up, and as you do that, just don't pull it too tight. Now on this pattern, instead of doing 6s all the way up, we're going to alternate. So this time I'm only going to do 3, which means I'm in 1, and then count 2 and then 3 and come down. And what will happen is you're just going to repeat this as you go up the board, and it will create this nice textured effect. You can switch your colours, or you can use the big ones the same colour and the little ones differently. As you'll see in mine, I used a mixture of colours. I just kept going with the colours as I wanted. So once you've done that and you're ready to stitch, fill in the grid. So once you finish your stitching, you should have something that looks like this. Just a few things to point out. This is where I started at the bottom, and you'll notice that at the end I've gone back and just filled in the gaps. You should fill in your grid until you reach the end of it. So here there were smaller spaces, but I've just filled those up, and here there were slightly bigger ones. So your grid should be completely full of stitches, and it should look something like this on the back. It's quite satisfying. So once you've done this, we're now going to turn our piece into the wall hanging. It's nice and simple to do. Using these frames, which have magnets on them, you literally just open them up like this and then place one side on your Bargello, like so, and one side on your hanger. Now, because this is a thicker piece, although the magnets do pick up, they're not super strong. So I would recommend just a strip of double-sided tape or some glue just to hold it in place, but it's totally up to you. It does lift up without that, so it's up to you. So once you've done that, you'll also add your piece onto the bottom, and it's ready to hang.